information to gateways like the phone, like the gateway, internet gateway, etc. But the idea is to gather all of this disparate data and aggregate it in a way that, again, can be diagnostically or therapeutically useful. And pulling all this data together can accomplish a lot of different benefits. For example, smart alarms. One of the most significant problems in the healthcare setting right now is having what's called alarm fatigue. And that's where a clinician hears alarms constantly and becomes desensitized to them. Using these kinds of technologies, you can actually build logical intelligence in such that if you inflate a blood pressure cuff, it knows to suppress the alarm function on a pulse oximeter. So the market has already started to respond to these kinds of things. We see some technologies that are already regulated. The FDA has cleared over 100 mobile apps already. Some of them transform devices into communication devices, into medical devices, etc. And the regulators have begun to consider the risks. So there are a number of different regulations and guidance documents that have been released around this. The focus of today's discussion, which we'll get into in the second half in more detail, is the mobile medical app guidance. But regulations really look at a number of different facets of the technology. It looks at enabling technologies, for example, Wi-Fi, Zigbee, Bluetooth, Ethernet, etc. It looks at the product itself, that's using these enabling technologies to achieve a medical function. Finally, it looks at the use and the usability of these products. Many of the guidance documents and so forth you saw on the previous slide point to the need for usability testing. Whenever we look at a new technology, it's very important to understand what risk might be associated with that technology. And there's an engineering methodology that you all helped to develop along with Hewlett-Packard called hazard-based safety engineering. And this is a fairly fundamental tenet around risk management. So as soon as this slide loads here, we'll take a look at that process. It is looking at how a hazardous source, for example, a source of hazardous energy like electricity or radiation, might transfer to a susceptible part. The hazardous energy, if it gets to the susceptible part, will ultimately cause harm. And examining the transfer mechanism of how that hazardous energy might reach the susceptible part and making risk control decisions on how to either eliminate it, guard against it, reduce the susceptibility of the part, or warn against it is the basic methodology. When we take a look at all of these different hazards, there are energy hazards, there are data hazards. So energy hazards might be kinetic energy or potential energy. Data hazards might be related to the acquisition, storage, or propagation of data. Use hazards might have to do with the safety and effectiveness, looking at interoperability, performance, etc. And so you all provide standards-based testing and certification to address hazards at all these different levels. We can help to develop assurance cases, we can provide safety certification, certificates of conformance for different markets, and product marks that help to convey the critical information about these different hazards so that system integrators can effectively use that information. So if we look at a specific technology, like wearable technologies are very popular now, looking at maybe augmented reality glasses, we have to ask ourselves, are there any hazards here? So as we look at a wearable technology, we can see as the next slide loads that when you're dealing with an interface to the human body, you have to think about a lot of different things. You have to think about things like optical radiation. How is the image being projected into the eye? Is there UV radiation being generated by that? Then from a more data-centric perspective, it's important to think about the privacy issues. Like in the U.S., there's HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability Assurance Act, and there's performance, for example, of this device were used by a doctor. What's the criticality of that information that they're saying is perhaps they're performing surgery or something like that that's assisted by this. Similarly, if you look at the interface to the ear, you need to ask questions like how much acoustic energy is being transferred, can that cause damage to my hearing? Data integrity and usability. For example, if I'm projecting something in my field of vision, is that going to potentially create its own hazard? So UL works with a number of different government agencies really around the world. Here we've shown some in the U.S. So we participated in the FDASIA working group last summer, which helped FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration Center for Devices and Radiologic Health, work together with the Federal Communication Commission and the Office of the National Coordinator to determine what types of regulations might be needed. They wanted to understand how to deal with risks from